I welcome you all for PRAGATII Test Booster Session, Day 1. So I would like to hand this over without further ado to our tutor, Mr. Suyas. Guys, have a fruitful session.
Thank you for that. Hi, everyone. I'm Suyash. First and foremost, welcome to PRAGATII Test Booster Sessions by Admizz. I'm your tutor for this session, and I'm really looking forward to sharing the knowledge that I have with you guys. So without any further delay, we'll be starting this session, right? So before moving forward to the formal topics that we're going to discuss on this session, I'll be quickly giving you an overview of the syllabus for PRAGATII exams. So as you can see here, there will be 3 topics that we'll be discussing on, or 3 categories per se. First is verbal reasoning, which deals with English grammar, vocabularies, and things of that nature. Second is quantitative aptitude, which deals with mathematics. And third is logical reasoning, which, as the name implies, deals with logic, right? So for this session, we'll be solely focusing on verbal reasoning, and even inside that, we'll be focusing on analogies, antonyms, synonyms, one-word substitution, idioms, and phrases, right? So we'll be quickly diving into this entire thing without any further ado. First, we've got one-word substitutions, right? Now, I've presented the slides in such a way that it'll be really easy for you to know what you have to do in these types of problems, even right now when I'll be presenting the practice slides and even in the formal examinations, right? So in these types of questions, what you have to do is you have to choose the option that gives the exact or at least the closest meaning to the statement that is provided in the question, right? So take a look at this example, right? The branch of medical science which deals with the problems of the old, right? Now, you'll be presented with 4 options in this, right? Now, in every problem of PRAGATII exam, there will be 4 options. And so you have to choose the best option, which gives a meaning exactly to the one that matches with what the statement is posing in the question, or at least something that's close enough, right? So in this case, I've mentioned that the answer is the second one, right? Geriatrics, right? But what if you did not know if the answer was geriatrics, right? What if you knew most of the options, but what if you did not know what geriatrics meant in the first place, right? So in this case, what you can do is you can implement the process of elimination, right? For instance, obstetrics means study of pregnancy or pregnancy cycles, right? Endocrinology means study of hormones or hormonal behaviors in human beings, right? Oncology means study of tumors, right? So with this, I think the option narrows down to geriatrics because other options do not match with this problem in general, right? So the correct answer is geriatrics. Now I'll be giving you guys some practice problems on one-word substitutions, and hopefully you guys will find this fruitful, right? Now, the first problem, and before moving forward to these practice problems, I have to impose a caveat, right? Now, these topics, or the topics that we are going to discuss on today in general, are not conceptual, right? So there's not much that you should conceptually gain or conceptually acquire from these things, right? These are topics that you can strengthen on only through deliberate practice, right? So practice is a must to sort of soar in these types of topics. And I've, in this slide, included quite a few practice problems, but those will surely not be enough. So at the end of this slide, I've also included some useful resources, which you guys can go on and check out after this session to gain more practice and to strengthen your core in these topics, right? So on to first practice problem. The statement is deriving pleasure from inflicting pain on others, right? Now, there are 4 options. And I'll be revealing the answer once I get a few number of answers from you guys, and I'll be telling you if you guys, most of you were correct or not. So I'll be waiting for a few seconds to get some engagement in the chat. All right, so I got quite a few number of problems, and some of you were correct, some of you weren't. So the correct answer to this is sadism, right? Now, why is that the case, right? So we'll proceed from in ascending order, right? We'll move from bigotry to sadism, and I'll be explaining why sadism is the best possible answer in this case, right? So first, take a look at bigotry, right? Now, bigotry, or bigotry as British call it, bigotry means to have a prejudicial or a pre-established view on some matter, right? So that does not really fit into what the problem is asking in this case, right? So that's not correct in this case. Masochism is one of the closest option to what the problem is asking at this point, right? Because it means deriving pleasure from inflicting pain, but on oneself, right? Not on others, right? So masochism, or if someone is called a masochist, then he or she derives pleasure from inflicting pain on oneself and not on others, right? So it does not really, it fits in to the problem in some way, but not completely, right? So we'll look for better alternatives. Malevolence means to depict anger or hostility in some circumstances, right? So it does not fit into problem. It's not correct option. Sadism means exactly what the problem is asking, right? It means deriving pleasure from inflicting pain on others, right? So it's the correct answer. Way to go, guys. Now, next up, a funeral bell. I'll be waiting. We'll be following the same drill. I'll be waiting for a few seconds to gain some answers, and then I'll be revealing the correct answer. All right, perfect. I got a few engagement. Yes, the correct answer in this case is epitaph, right? Now, why is that the case? Is because epitaph literally means a funeral bell, right? Now, honor means to give some respect to someone, to honorify them per se. Lyric means a written form of poetry, prose, or a song. Memento, on the other hand, is a sort of symbol of some which particularly symbolizes something, some event, or some place, right? So the correct alternative is epitaph because it means a funeral bell. Pretty easy to see. Now, next up, the art of producing beautiful handwriting using a brush or a pen. I'll be waiting for a few seconds. Absolutely. The correct answer in this case is calligraphy. I mean, it's a pretty common word. It's used in our day-to-day lives most of the times. Hieroglyphics means study of ancient Egyptian textures, scriptures. Stenciling means a form of art which is basically attained by using graphite, lead, or things of that nature. Graphics is obviously related to image, art, or things of that nature. So obviously it boils down to calligraphy, right? So this is pretty intuitive, pretty standard. Next up, to free anything from germs. Absolutely, it's sterilized, right? Because that's, I mean, it's the most common word, especially in these times when COVID pandemic is going on the rise and whatnot, right? So I hope everyone's familiar with this word. So with that, we come to the last problem of this session, of this subtopic. The custom of having more than one husband at the same time. Yep, you guys guessed it correct. It's polyandry, right? So polyandry, andry in general means it symbolizes a male figurine, a male silhouette. And polygamy means the custom of having more than one wife at the same time. Debauchery means addiction to sex, gambling, alcohol, or things of that nature. And bigamy means the process of or the custom of having two wives at the same time, right? So polyandry is the correct answer. Now, next up, we'll be moving on to our next topic, antonyms. Right now, antonyms are words that give opposite meanings of the words provided, right? So, I mean, it's pretty intuitive, pretty easy to see. Now, in problems that ask you to find opposite meanings, what you have to do is, it's pretty intuitive. You have to simply choose the word that gives the opposite meaning of the word provided from the four options that are given to you, right? So for instance, take a look at this example. Now, delirious, the antonym of delirious is calm, which I've mentioned here because delirious means a state of panic, a state of direness, and calm is the exact opposite of that, right? It symbolizes serenity, peace, and things of that nature, right? So it's pretty easy. Now we'll be moving directly into practice problems. And as I mentioned before, in these topics, practice makes you perfect. So it's needed as much as possible, right? First one, palpable. Let's see if I get any engagement from the chat. Most of you guessed 3, fresh, right? But that's not the correct answer, right? The correct answer is imaginary, right? Because palpable means something which is abstract, right? Something which is not quite a real, surreal in other words, right? And so the exact opposite, or the exact, I mean, palpable means something which is real in a way, right? Surreal, right? So the exact opposite, or this word that is closest the opposite to that word would be imaginary. So that's the correct answer, right? We'll be moving on to the next problem without any further ado. Elegance. Yep, most of you guessed it correct. It's vulgarity, because elegance means the trait of having a noble stature, a noble presence, while vulgarity is the exact opposite of that, right? It means possessing or depicting a barbaric behavior in most of the times, right? So vulgarity is the antonym of elegance. So that's why it's the correct answer right now. Other options, they seem quite dissonant in this case, right? They don't quite match with the problem. So even by the process of elimination, you could have arrived at this answer, right? Because pride is almost similar to elegance. Coarseness is somewhat deviates from elegance, but is not quite the opposite of that thing. Beautiful is synonymous to elegance, so vulgarity is the only one left, right? Most of you might have had problems with coarseness and vulgarity, but vulgarity is the more extreme form of coarseness per se, right? So that's the correct answer. Next up, reprimand. Most of you guessed option number 4, and that's the correct answer, because reprimand means to boycott something or someone, while praise is the exact opposite of that, right? Praise means to spotlight someone, right? So reprimand's antonym is praise, and that's the closer, and that's the correct answer, right? Now, next up, we'll be moving on to another practice problem, fluctuate. Absolutely. Fluctuate is a really, like, it's a word that's used almost daily in most of our lives. So the opposite of this is obviously stabilize. Fluctuate means to deviate from its present state in a drastic manner, while stabilize means to persist in its current state, right? Stabilize is the one that perfectly fits with this problem. Awkward. Most of you are guessing graceful in this one, and that's the correct one. But some of you also guessed irrelevant in this case, right? Now, I'll be explaining why relevant is not quite antonymous to awkward, right? Now, awkward means to be in a situation which makes you feel uneasy, right? while grace, on the other hand, makes you feel warm, cozy, and just like you fit in that particular circumstance, right? So grace and awkwardness have this sort of opposite meaning to each other. So graceful is the answer to this problem. But relevant, on the other hand, means to to fit into a particular circumstance, but not really in a graceful way, right? So it does not really gives the exact opposite meaning of awkwardness in this case, and that's why that's not the correct answer per se, right? And next up, we have finished with antonym, and now we'll be moving on to synonyms. Now, synonyms are the exact opposite of antonyms, right? In antonym problems, you had to find the word which meant the exact opposite of the word provided, while in synonyms, you have to choose the word that gives the exact same meaning as the word that's given in the problem, right? For instance, take a look at this example, right? Estrange means to alienate, right? To sort of boycott someone from a particular place or from a particular event, right? So estrange and alienate have got the exact same meaning. So alienate is the synonym of estrange, right? So with that said, we'll be directly moving on to the practice problems. First, vendetta. Most of you are guessing mortal, but mortal is not the correct answer. The correct answer is feud, right? So feud means to have a sort of an intrinsic, deliberate sort of persistence towards some goal. And so does vendetta mean. Vendetta means the exact same. So they have got quite synonymous meanings, and that's why they are the synonyms of one another, right? Next up, addict. It's quite easy. I mean, this is a word that's used on a daily basis in most of our lives. Yep, most of you guessed it correct. The answer is doper, because doper means someone who constantly dopes their physical being. That is to mean this word came about from the word dope, or which also came about from the word dopamine, which means the happy chemical in our brains. And so doping means to enhance your physical abilities, and doper means someone who does that, and so is an addict, right? So doping is addictive. And so from that sense, these two are synonymous to one another. Next up, dainty. Absolutely. Most of you are guessing the correct answer. The correct answer is too delicate, because dainty means something that is delicately small and pretty, right? So it means something that is really cute in a way, right? And delicate really fits into that. Fragile does not really imply that the thing is small and pretty. It just means that the thing is easily breakable or things of that nature, right? So I think so delicate really fits in with the problem in this case. Next up, quibble. I'll be waiting for a few seconds. I see mixed answers in the chat. The correct answer in this case is quibble, right? Because cavil means to make unnecessary objections at a particular statement or at a particular implication, right? And quibble means to exactly do that. It means to interfere unnecessarily, right? So these two have got the exact same meaning, and that's the reason why quibble is the right answer. Now, since I got mixed answers in this case, I'll be explaining why other answers were not correct as well, right? So take a look at munch, right? Munch means to eat voraciously, or munch means to snack from time to time. So it does not really fit in with quibble in a way. Amuse means to entertain, which too does not exactly mean what quibble is. Appreciate means to sort of praise someone, right? So the only one implying a sort of negative connotation at this point is quibble. And so it fits in with quibble, so it's the correct answer. Next up, we've got mayhem. Yep, most of you guessed it correctly. The correct answer is havoc, because havoc means to create a situation of panic, a situation of despair, and mayhem means exactly that. So these two are exactly synonymous to one another. Majesty means king or someone in that stature. Defeat means to lose, and king is synonymous to majesty. So these don't fit well with mayhem. So havoc is the correct answer, right? So you might have noticed that most of these problems can be solved even by the process of elimination, even if you don't exactly know the concise answer to a particular problem. You can still, by the process of elimination, by knowing which answers are not correct, reach to the correct answer, right? So hopefully that's clear. Havoc. Now, next up, we've got analogies. Now, most students find this one quite confusing because the implications or the options are not quite direct. They require, so analogies is sort of like a mix of logic and English vocabularies, right? You have to sort of know which words fit well together and which words imply, which pair of words imply the same meaning as the one that are given in the problem, right? So in this analogies, or in the type of problems that are related to analogies, what you have to do is you have to choose the pair which best expresses the relationship similar to the one that is expressed in the main pair, right? So for instance, take a look at this example: glove and ball, right? Now, usually glove is used to catch a ball, right? In cricket, in baseball, we have seen this quite a few times. Glove is used to catch ball. Now we'll be skimming through the options one by one, right? Hook and fish. Hook is used to catch a fish. So it makes sense, right? So it might be the correct answer, but we'll look at all the other options just to make sure that we have got the correct answer, right? Summer and winter. Summer and winter are sort of like the opposites, right? Summer is hot, winter is cold, so they don't really fit in, right? Game and study is the same as summer and winter. They are opposite as well. Stadium and seats have got a container and containment relation. That is to mean that stadium hosts seats. So it does not really make sense in this problem, right? So the correct answer must obviously be hook and fish, right? So that's the correct answer in this case. Now, without any further ado, we'll be moving on to practice problems quickly. Farmer and crop. Absolutely. Most of you guessed it correct, right? Now, I mean, it'll be quite unjust to not explain other answers on why they're not correct, right? So I'll be explaining all the options and we'll be pinpointing which one's the correct one, right? So take a look at, we'll start from the end, right? So take a look at fabric and yarn, right? Fabric is a particular substance which is used to create yarn. Yarn is the thread that we use to knit, right? So fabric and yarn have got, like, the relation is quite clear, right? Fabric is used to create yarn. In third, we've got wish and desire, right? Now, wish and desire are quite synonymous terms, right? They mean almost the exact same thing. right? But they don't really fit in with the relation that we see with farmer and crop. That is to mean farmer grows crops, but wish does not grow desire, right? Or wish does not relate to desire in a work basis, right? Because farmers' work is to grow crops, Nathan. Yeah. So now we'll be moving on to the second option, which is cat and kitten. Now, cat and kitten have got this parent and offspring relation. Kitten is the offspring of cat. So, and crop is not the offspring of farmer, obviously. So the relation is quite unclear here. Now, lastly, in editor and newspaper, editor writes in newspaper columns. So obviously it must be the answer, right? Because editor and newspaper have got this work relation as well. And also editor writes on newspapers, right? So because that's a work relation. So obviously it must be the correct answer, right? So it's quite intuitive. It's quite logical per se. So that's the correct answer in this case. Editor and newspaper. Next up, horse and colt. All right, so most of you got this correct, but I saw most answers that were pointing to goat and bleat as well, right? Now, the thing is, bleat is a sound that goat makes, right? So if the problem was horse and knee, N-E-I-G-H, knee, which the sound that horse makes, then the first option would have been correct, right? But since colt is baby of a horse or a baby horse, it does not really make sense to sort of take this answer, right? Because bleat does not relate to goat in the same way that colt does to horse, right? So the correct answer in this case is dog and puppy, because obviously they've got a relation of a parent and a child, right? We'll be quickly moving on to other problems, sip and gulp. Yep, absolutely. It's touch and push. Now, why is that the case, right? Look at soup and water in the first problem, right? Soup is something that is created out of water, but sip and gulp don't share the same relation, right? Now, tent and hut, they are both places of residence, and they don't really imply the same thing that sip and gulp do. So they don't make sense in this problem at all. But touch and push, take a look at these, right? Now, touch means to embrace something softly, while push means to shove or to touch something in a more forceful manner, right? And take a look at sip and gulp as well, right? Sip means to have something or have a liquidish substance in a more graceful manner, while gulp means to take it in more like in a more forceful manner, right? If that makes sense. So touch and push have got the same relation that sip and gulp do. So they are the so that's the correct answer. Option 3 is the correct answer in this case, right? Hopefully that's making sense up to this point. Next up, bouquet and flowers. Yep, everyone guessed correctly in this case. It was quite simple. Bouquet is something that is made through a collection of flowers. So flowers attach together to form a bouquet. And same is the case with necklace and beads, right? A necklace is a collection of numerous beads. Beads may be of different color, but that does not really concern us at this moment, right? Door and handle, they don't make sense at this problem. Room and door, they don't make sense as well. And door and window, the same thing. So necklace and beads is the most appropriate answer, most relevant answer in this case. Now, lastly, crown and king. Mhm. I'm getting quite a few answers there, and they're quite mixed to say. I mean, the correct answer in this case will be is mitre and priest. Now, mitre is not a word that is commonly used. I mean, I can relate to the students. I mean, it's quite difficult to see as well, right? So crown is an attribute of the king, right? It's used to symbolize king. In the same way, mitre is the long hats that bishops or people, especially of people following Christian religion, usually wear, right? So mitre is that thing, and so it symbolizes priests in Christian communities, right? So that makes sense in this case. Now, most of you were saying flower gardener and pen and student as well, but those are not correct. Why? Because flower, I mean, it might be an attribute that symbolizes gardener, but gardener does not really wear flower at all times, right? While crown is worn by the king at all times, and so is mitre by the priest, right? So we have to take a look at that relation as well, right? So you have to be mindful in these problems. You have to look at them from different vantage points, right? To gain to at least reach to the correct answer, right? Pen and student the same way. Pen does not symbolize a student. It can symbolize an officer, it can symbolize a highly educated person, but not concisely a student, right? It's not unique to a student. So it does not really fit in this problem. Now, the fourth option, words and dictionary, I mean, they are simply out of the discussion, right? Because words are contained within dictionary and they do not really relate to crown and king in the first place. So mitre priest is the correct answer in this case, right? Now, lastly, we'll be moving on to the final subtopic that we'll be discussing today, right? That is idioms and phrases. Now, in these problems, what you have to do is you have to choose the alternatives which best expresses the meaning of the idiom or phrases, right? So idioms are basically a group of words that give a particular meaning, right? For instance, in this case, oily tongue, right? We have, I mean, so these two collection of words give a separate meaning to what other single words can give, right? So idioms or phrases basically came into inception from that logic, right? So they're a collection of words which give a particular meaning, right? So in this case, oily tongue means to flatter someone, right? To make someone feel butterflies in their belly or to make someone feel special, right? So hopefully everyone's clear on what to do in these topics. You'll have to choose the option which best relates to this to this problems. You'll have to choose the words which relate to the words in the closest order, right? We'll be quickly moving on to the practice problems in this case. First one is fall flat, right? So I'll be waiting for a few seconds to gain some engagement and then we'll move on to discuss the answer. All right, I'm getting a few engagements here. Most of you are guessing either 2, 3, or 1 to fall in love or to lose consciousness. But sadly, those two are not the correct answer. The correct answer is fail to win appreciation, right? So I can see where you guys are coming from when you choose the first option, right, to fall in love, because fall and fall they both match, and then so I guess you guys were thinking from that point of view, right? But you just simply fall in love, right? You don't fall flat in love. So the first option does not really make sense in this case, right? Now, third, lose consciousness, fall flat is not prominently used to express this thing, right? I mean, most people use going green or something of that nature to express losing consciousness. So fall flat best means to fail to win appreciation, and that's the correct answer in this case, right? Next up, we've got to look blue. I'll be waiting for a few seconds to gain some engagement. Absolutely. Most of you guessed option number 2, and that's the correct answer. To look blue means to look sad, right? Because blue in literature and historical English symbolizes sadness, right? While green symbolizes life and gray symbolizes absence of life, blue symbolizes uh, this effect of sadness, right? So in most sad movies, you see this blue filter used prominently, and that's used to depict sadness in those cases, right? So you have to, so while dealing with idioms and phrases, you have to be able to relate things to other things as well, right? So you have to learn things. You can either memorize this or you can relate to them with some practical aspects and then look at them through that lens as well, right? Next up, we've got high and dry. I'll be waiting for a few seconds. Yep, most of you guess it correct. High and dry means to be isolated. So there's this one famous song called High and Dry by Radiohead, which necessarily implies meanings that relate to isolation in prominence. So I personally relate to this thing from that point of view, but I'll be sharing plethora of resources at the end of this session through which you can learn more about idioms and phrases, right, in general. High and dry does not mean rejected. It does not mean wounded as well. And it does not mean depressed as well. So this is something to keep in mind as well, right? So keep this in mind. Next up, we've got tooth and nail. All right, I'm getting mixed answers in this case. Um, some of you are guessing 3. I mean, most of you were guessing 3, and some of you were even guessing 4. I mean, that makes sense. Tooth and nail sort of depict strength and fury in some cases. And most of you are also guessing 1, but that's not the correct answer. The correct answer is 2, the one which most of you were not able to guess. So in idioms and phrases, while sometimes practically looking at things can make sense, most of the times it fails equally likely. So you guys have to first and foremost memorize idioms and phrases as much as you can, because as I mentioned, before beginning with these problems, practice is the key to sort of soar through these problems in the formal exam. You have to practice these as much as possible to sort of succeed in these problems, right? Next up, we've got cuts both ends, right? All right. Oh, apparently I showed the answer in this case. So cuts both ends means to argue in support of both sides of the issue, right? Because I mean, it makes sense, right? Cutting at both ends means to equally favor both sides in a particular circumstance or in a particular discussion, right? Now, it can also mean at some point, I mean, option number 2 and option number 1 seem quite similar in this case, working for both sides and arguing in support of both sides of the issue. But notice that cuts both ends is sort of like a rhetoric term, right? That is to mean that it is used to describe arguments, debates, or things of that nature, right? So it does not necessarily imply work or to work in this case. So the correct answer in this case is option number 2, right? Now, option number 3 and 4 behaves dishonestly and inflicts injury on others are simply out of the way. I mean, most of you might have logically or intuitively guessed option number 4, because cutting sort of means to inflict injuries, but that's not the correct answer in this case. The correct answer is option number 2, right? So with that, we have come to the end of this discussion as a whole. Hopefully it was fruitful for everyone. Now, there are these resources are really beneficial, right? So please take a screenshot of this particular slide, because these resources will come really handy when you practice problems. The first two are resources from Admizz website. They contain plethora of information on these topics, so please do visit them. Admizz also has got an app on the Play Store for an unlimited amount of mock tests, so please do feel free to check that out. And the other 4 resources contain PDFs and handouts that sort of imply, or that sort of have got problems related to synonyms, antonyms, idioms, phrases, and things that are discussed in this session earlier, right? So feel free to check those out. Please take a screenshot of this slide as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Suyasa. So I hope, can you please continue sharing the slide?
Absolutely. Just give me a few seconds. Yep.
Okay. So I hope you all had a very fruitful session. Our whole Admizz team would like to thank Mr. Suyas for this session. We are hoping for another more 11 sessions with you. So yeah, we'll be hearing your voice in future. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, so I would like to say that our app is live in the Play Store, and we'll be dropping, let me check with my team, we'll be dropping a banner, a QR code to directly download the applications. Okay, so I'm getting a question saying, is there any classes there tomorrow? So these classes will be every alternate days from today. So we are taking a gap for tomorrow, and we'll be resuming day after tomorrow. So there will be 1 day gap, and then we'll be continuing the other day. So okay, you can find the link for the Admizz app where you can give unlimited mock tests. Yeah, so the timing will be same. We'll be joining in the same time so that you guys will not be confused. Okay, so regarding the final examination, can you just text us in our Facebook or Instagram pages so that I can give you the orientation, or my team can also drop in the link to our YouTube orientation video. So I think that will help them too. And about the main examination dates, so we'll not be taking all these queries. So I hope you all will email us or text us so that we can get to your queries one by one. So thank you, everyone. I think we are good to end this session for today. Hope to see you day after tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. So guys, I think we are not done yet. So if you want to scan the QR code and download our app, please do it right now. So we are leaving with this screenshot for a few minutes so that you all can download the app, and then you can start practicing.